order. First up on our agenda for today is election of board officers. And Julie, I think, had a conversation with our, so I am the chair today, but our usual board chair is Ross Miller, and you had talked to him, and what's the word?
So, not being present today, if someone chooses to nominate Ross for one of the positions, either chair again or vice chair, he is willing to serve again. So, and it's always been the board's policy that a person nominated does not have to be present to actually be
It's a great way. So
I
come
feel
to all
like
the
we did this
meetings,
last
right?
year with Ross.
Yeah.
Seen this in a while. So are you looking for nominations?
Yeah.
I would nominate Ross Miller as chair.
Second. Oh, that discussion.
So any board discussion on the motion on the floor? Any staff comments? Any public comments? All those in favor?
So I do have one question, unless you'd like to be the chair.
I'm good.
Okay.
Have Ross carry on, because I think the next
You take
motion
turns.
will be something similar.
Yeah, I think so,
Vice
too.
chair. So all those in favor on the motion, signal with aye.
Aye.
We elect a vice chair, don't we?
Yes, we do.
Yes. So,
So I would move that I would nominate Debbie for the vice chair.
and I'm fine with that, so I can carry on in the same capacity. Any other board discussion on the motion? Any staff comments on the motion? Any public comments on the motion on the floor? All those in favor, signal with aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. So next up on Board of Health, and we did get those delivered with Julie, and I didn't, there we go. Yeah. Approval of the June 21st minutes for the Board of Health.
I would move to approve the June 21st minutes.
Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, signal with aye.
Aye.
Okay. Next up, and probably where we have folks here. So, hearing and possible action on the Lawson request for variance from Health Code Regulation 1, water treatment and disposal systems. And so, it's 12:20. Shannon, everyone that's interested in this discussion is present, or do we need to wait till 12:30? It was advertised for 12:30?
It's advertised for 12:30. We don't, you don't anticipate anybody else coming?
You, Bill?
We don't anticipate, we haven't heard that anybody else will be coming.
Do you think we're good to carry on, or should we?
I don't see any harm in coming back to that at 12:30 as scheduled.
Okay.
In case there is public.
Okay, so we will go on to, we'll hold on action on number 3 and move on to action 4, which I think we can take up, which is action on proposed letter to the Sealy Lake Sewer District in support of the Sealy Sewer. Shannon or Jim?
We're both done.
Both.
Hi there. So, Jim Irvin, Environmental Health Specialist, Health Department.
Jimmy, you're in the third row, the left corner. So,
That's
no.
not me.
So that guy right there.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
That's your
That's the very.
Blossom here.
Below that one.
There we are, thanks.
There's a little icon. Just delete that.
Yeah, moving on. So we're here today to talk about the Missoula Lake Sewer project and start by just frameworking the environmental issue we have going on up there. We've talked to the board about this in the past. It's still an issue. We have, due to the density of development and the fact that Missoula Lake is on primarily on-site septic systems. There's no major public infrastructure for wastewater up there. You know, the hydrogeology is such that studies have shown, current monitoring results still show that the nitrate levels in groundwater have neared and at times exceeded the maximum allowable concentrations under state law. And so for years now, the sewer district up there has been working on a proposed solution to that in the way of public sewer. So I'm just going to kind of run through just to refresh and show the issue a little bit more clearly. There's some studies back in the 90s that documented the issue, and we've been monitoring.
Can you tell us what those letters stand for?
I'm sorry, yeah, absolutely. The Montana Bureau of Mines in 1998, and UMT, is that? University? Yeah. So the university in 1996 put together a study. The Bureau of Mines was the bulk of the framework. Also, the Clearwater Resource Council has looked at that drainage at depth too, and found issues as well with the nitrate. And so we also have 3 monitoring wells that have been monitored since the early 2000s and are still being monitored quarterly at this point. Like I said, still showing high concentrations of nitrate in the groundwater there. The reason is you can see the groundwater flow direction coming down through the Sealy Lake community where it's most densely developed here along the eastern shoreline, east of the highway. Pushes the groundwater in through here. It collects a lot of nitrate as it nears the lake shore, and the concentration grows. You have the monitoring results on record upstream of this gradient, upstream of town, show what we normally expect with nitrate levels in the groundwater, typically less than 1 milligram per liter. And then as it passes through town and we look at the sample results along the lake shore, it's, like I said, it's exceeded at times and neared the standard of 10 milligrams per liter. This is just a depiction of the density of septic systems in this area. These icons here all depict septic permit records. Most of the properties in town here do have septic permit records, but there are septic systems in the ground that don't have septic permit records associated with them. So there's even more systems in the ground than are shown here, but this is mainly just to illustrate the density of the discharge that we have going on here.
What's the difference between the O's and the I's?
Those are just with the way that they're coded in the GIS database. Some of them are located by structure, some of them are located by GPS.
Well, and that, excuse me, Jim, that specifically is the O's are before we started keeping that part of the record, but in our database. But the I's stand for individual, the B stands for business, the C stands for community. But sometimes the C stands for commercial because it's been, it's a database that's gone back from the 80s, so it's not completely consistent. But the O's just mean that we weren't capturing that information in our database before.
No, that's right, thank you. So I said that we had a few monitoring wells that have been monitored since the early 2000s along the lake shore. These are the locations of those wells. Well number 1, well number 2, and well number 3. There's also been surface water sampling at the points illustrated here, which don't show, the surface water sampling does not show exceedance of the surface water standards. However, the lake does show issues of nutrient loading. You can see when you look at aerial photography and when you spend time around the lake shore, there is a lot of accelerated plant growth happening along the lake shore. Clearwater Resource Council has done some studies downstream towards the salmon lake drainage and noted some early stages of eutrophication in the system. So in response to this, we've had a policy in place for years here at the Health Department when it comes to septic permitting new or increased use in this area. And this was officially made a special management area by the board in 2015. The approach here is that we've taken measures to ensure that the problem does not get worse. So anytime somebody proposes new or increased use in this area, we have the responsibility to be shown by the applicant that the proposed development is not going to cause or contribute to a further violation of the standard in this area. So those regulations are currently in place. The reason we're here today is because there's a lot happening with this project right now, and Shannon will explain more in detail, but this is the Sealy Sewer District boundaries that the project is slated to serve. And most recent history, there's some funding that was offered to the project. The bulk of it comes from the USDA Rural Development Fund or Department, and there's some other grants and loans that are funding the project. But this USDA grant is huge. I think it's something in the way of $9 million.
It's 12 million in loans and grants, 12 million.
Some of it is loans, right?
And it's my understanding that that grant is going, or that funding source, the rural development, is going to be kind of axed under Trump's proposals in the future, so that money may not be available very much longer.
It's one of the largest grants ever, especially for a community this size.
Thank you.
Can you, board members, speak up, please, for the
Oh,
record?
sure.
Thank you. We did hear. I saw your hand go up.
There was a vote in 2016 on whether to accept this funding. That was a requirement of the USDA funding package. That vote actually failed. It was later determined that that vote was not legally required, and so the funding package was preliminarily accepted, and the project went forward with planning. Under that, there was a protest period that was unsuccessful. Yeah, in 2017, the community did not garner enough protests within the district to stop the development of the project. So that's the current status of it. The planning is still underway. They're approaching the bidding phase. They are a little bit behind schedule. The total cost of phase one is $15.5 million, and as Jean pointed out, there's a lot of money available from the USDA, $12 million including the loans. So Shannon was going to speak on the current status of the board.
Right, so right now, why we're coming to you right now is that this has been moving forward, in the Sealy Lake Sewer District Board has been very supportive of the project and has worked hard with the Public Works Director to make it happen. And then there was a vote in earlier this spring, and 3 of the 5 members are new. And 3 of those 5 members have expressed varying degrees of reservation about the project, and the concern is that even a delay in the project could result in a loss of funding. We've met, Jim has reached out to the 3 members. We've met with one of them. We're meeting with another one today, which is one of the reasons why we're leaving early. And the third has not been open to meeting with us at this point, but we keep trying to talk with him and give him information. We went to a community council meeting. The community council is also supportive of the sewer project, and we were there last week. The community council voted to send a letter of support of the sewer project to the district board, trying to let them know that a lot is riding on this and that there really is support in the community for going through with the sewer project. So one of the things that we've recognized is that people just are not, when they're talking about the health concerns, they're not always doing that in an accurate way. They're misusing the information or misunderstanding the information. I feel like when we met with one of the new board members and Jim showed her the concentration of septic systems in the groundwater flow direction, she got it. And before then, it was like, well, aren't the other residences closer to the lake the real problem, and why aren't you focused on those instead of on us? And so we're trying to give the message about, what the science behind the nitrate issue there. And the other thing is that if Sealy Sewer, if they stop moving forward, if it's not going to be the solution to the problem, this board we're going to be back and we're going to say, what is it that we need to do to correct the violation that's there? Because there is a groundwater violation where at least one of the wells is routinely at or over the standard. And so we want to make sure that the district board hears that and understands that. So that is why we put together this letter. We have, Jim and Gina have been to a district board, the sewer district board meeting, and we just think that the health board weighing in, we're hoping would have an impact on at least some of the members, some of the new members. They have a meeting tonight, which is partly why we were so interested in getting this in front of you today. When I talked with Greg Robertson, they have to adopt a new schedule in order to keep the funding, but we don't know that if they don't adopt a new schedule today that the funding would go away. It might be that the funders give them a new schedule and say, here's the schedule you have to follow through on. That I know, it's just we get different information, and we know some of the information that we hear about the health department stuff is wrong, so we really don't know what's right, but we're trying to understand all the information out there. The other thing is that Greg said, really they could vote to just stop the project at any meeting. They could vote to not move forward. They could vote to delay it and to look into other options. So it's just not, the project isn't at the point yet where it's moving forward. My understanding is Public Works or the district staff is moving forward with what they're to do to get the project to work, and we just are hoping to be as supportive as possible with that. And so with that, we have the letter. The draft that I hope that you have in front of you is the one that on the very top says second draft, 7/17. Debbie helped us make it better after we talked to her. So what we are hoping is that, I don't think you put the motion on there, but what we're hoping is that you would move to approve this letter and have Debbie sign it, and then we could deliver it to the board tonight or by electronic means.
So Shannon and Jim, you do have a document right there, and it's got your motion on page 2.
Okay.
Thank you.
And just for awareness for this group and for the public, Sealy Lake does not have a public water system. They're on individual wells, individual septics right
No,
now.
they do have a water system.
There is a water system.
Yeah.
Okay.
For part of the town.
The concentrated part, okay.
And the water system does pull from the lake, and what we're talking about is groundwater, but one of the laws, the Clean Water, or the Water Quality Act of Montana, I'm sorry, is that you protect it for possible future uses. And so you just have to protect that groundwater as a future possible public water supply. So you really can't say, oh, most people don't use it for drinking, so we don't care about it. And it is possible, I mean, we have seen harmful algae growth or blooms in some of the lakes up there. It is possible that that lake water will not always be the right water supply for them.
Right, you can't, for the public largely, you can't boil the toxin out of surface water that has a blue-green algae bloom in it.
Right.
So this lake is also kind of a unique lake. Jim, can you go back to the overview that kind of shows the end of the lake there? Well, that green one was actually better back.
One more.
That one.
Yeah.
Well, so
We could pull it up.
well, mostly the outlet of the lake is not down here at the bottom. It's way over to the side, and so that's the other unique thing. Luckily, the water system pulls from the north end of the lake, because the south end is not something you want to be drinking out of. So I think that's one of the unique factors there. And then the other is with the flooding this spring, a lot of these, while they're not the biggest culprits, a lot of those older cabins that are around the south end of the lake likely have the oldest systems, which are sets of rings, car bodies, whatever. And when the water got high this year,
Rinsed them out.
Not a good thing. So could you, so I have one other question. I know, because I do plan to attend the meeting tonight also. But I remember that the Linda Vista area, there was a federal grant for the Linda Vista area that the folks up there protested at one point. I couldn't remember what year, and I can't remember the dollar amount, but then they ended up not accepting the money. It was used somewhere else, and they ended up with $20,000 and $30,000 a piece.
Right.
Bills when things got so bad it had to be fixed.
So what happened there is the Department of Environmental Quality, it might have been the old MDHES before, but between the two, I guess they sued or they ordered, I can't remember, we didn't actually go to court, but they did officially order Missoula County to address the situation in Linda Vista, and then Missoula County had to treat the area as a non-point source of pollution to the groundwater. The remedy was then required sewering, and it was done without that grant assistance at a higher cost because it took a number of years for that order to be implemented.
Do you remember the year and the dollar amount that they threw away?
I don't remember the year or the dollar amount. I just remember
It was like the 90s though, right?
the regret associated with it having to come to that.
I
And
know
then-
we could find that information from Jean.
And then it did take years to get the actual contaminated parts of the aquifer, to get those figures to start to come down. Because that's not a fast-flowing part of the aquifer like we have here in the Missoula Valley. We have an unusually fast flow here. Other aquifers do not, so.
I suppose I would add, my understanding at this point is a lot of the contention with the board members has been the cost of the project. And I think it's noteworthy to point out, the thing that I don't see mentioned enough is the cost of replacing an on-site septic system, and how people typically are not prepared for that financial burden. It's not, even a standard septic system typically can range between $5,000 and $10,000 in cost. A lot of people don't, especially in this, more lower income area of the community, aren't prepared for that. So I would just point out that, the cost of the project sort of could be argued to be counterbalanced with the alternative of the reality that on-site systems do cost a lot, and that's just conventional systems that that don't deal with this issue necessarily, you know.
I think the other thing is, even if we said go tomorrow, on this project, it's going to take a while, because the first piece, of course, and part of the reason that this area, well, this is the most concentrated, but also it's the closest to where the plant is going to go. So, of course, you always build out from there. There's already the opportunity to put in for phase 2, so that you could get the ones down at the bottom of the lake. But even if we started the project tomorrow, and somebody started to put it together, we're going to have a couple years to find additional funds to help those who really need funds. And the goal of this project all along has been to make it affordable. And $13, $14, $15 million makes it affordable. So,
It goes a long way. Nothing ever gets cheaper.
no.
Ready to entertain a motion?
I move that we approve the letter to the Sealy Lake Sewer District Board supporting the Sealy Lake Centralized Sewer Project.
Any additional board discussion on the motion? Any additional staff comments or discussion? Any public comments on the motion on the floor? Yes, support it. There we go. Noted. Thank you. All those in favor, signal with aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
So I would recommend that we have a copy for staff to take tonight, but also send one officially by mail.
Yes.
Or electronically, whichever way.
And I need a different one because, of course, this was paper in front of me and I wrote on it and it has highlight on it.
And it has draft on it. We'll get that to you before the end of the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
And then just one other thing about it is that Gina had recommended that you know, the sewer district boards are super important and not a lot of people go to them. And so if you would be comfortable submitting it to the Pathfinder typically does print letters to the editor that they get. This really isn't written as a letter to the editor. I don't know if you want to write it as an open letter to the sewer district board, or if you'd like it slightly rewritten for a letter to the editor, but a lot of people out there just are not getting this message and they need it.
Well, I know that the Pathfinder's going to be there tonight because he already called me today.
Oh, okay.
So maybe if we just had an extra
Copy, give it to him.
Some copies.
Sounds good.
Okay. And then we can see if we
You can
need
send it
to-
electronically if you want. Yeah.
And the board, I mean, the health department could also write a letter specifically to the editor about the things that we're hearing that are wrong, you know, about, you know, some misperceptions out there. So we can do that. Okay.
And thank you for, to the board, but thank you staff for navigating this. I know it's been difficult.
Okay, we're going to circle back and go to agenda item number 3, which is the hearing and possible action on the loss and request for a variance from Health Code Regulation 1, water treatment and disposal systems. Back to Jim.
Hi. Just to preface this, this is a long, complicated story. Thank you. And I'm going to do my best to explain it in a timely fashion. I welcome anybody who would like to interrupt me with questions as I go. So this is a variance request to Regulation 1 of the Health Code for property owned by Bill and Lori Lawson. And there's really 2 parts to this variance request. And so I'd like to just frame it out generally so we can kind of wrap our heads around the bulk of it that way. The first part of it is the Lawsons are requesting approval for an existing unapproved septic system that the drain field, in which the drain field does not meet the required setbacks of the health code. Those setbacks are specifically called out in Regulation 1. It's the drain field is located less than 100 feet to surface water, less than 25 feet to a steep slope, less than 10 feet to an existing septic tank, and less than 10 feet to a structure's foundation. So those are the 4 specific setbacks that the drain field does not meet, and that's what the first part of this variance request is aimed to address. The second part of this variance request is that the applicants are asking for the board to approve a wastewater connection to the existing septic system that is to serve a detached garage with living space on the second story of that structure. So those are the main 2 parts we have to sort of navigate through this request with. And brief history of the regulations. Regulation 1 is all about wastewater. The purpose of it, of course, is to protect groundwater and surface water from contamination, protect public health, protect environmental quality. The setbacks specifically for a wastewater system are called out in the minimum wastewater standards, the administrative rules of Montana, rule reference there. They're adopted into the health code, and each of these rules, just to illustrate, they've been in the health code for a very long time. The 10-foot to a structure was first introduced in 1966. The 100 feet to surface water was in the health code 1972 on. The requirement for a 25-foot setback to a steep slope first showed up in 1980 more stringently at 50 feet. It's now 25 feet as of 2004. And the 10-foot setback to a septic tank has changed a little bit since it was first adopted, but 2004 in its current form. The parcel itself, the property in question, is located on Fish Lake, which is better known as Big Sky Lake. I have no idea why it has 2 names, but it does.
It used to be a fish hatchery.
Oh, is that right?
Now, thank you. 574 Access Road, Sealy Lake is the official address. This is the county boundaries with the location of the property there highlighted in yellow. This is Big Sky Lake here, subject property down at the bottom in blue. The legal description of the property, it's part of the Fred Edition Big Sky Lake Estates. It was created in 1966. It's 2.24 acres. And when it was created, it went through sanitation review and was issued a certificate of sanitation approval, allowing residential development with single-family dwelling to be served by on-site water supply and septic. In 1970, we at the health department issued a septic permit for a system to serve a 3-bedroom structure. And at the time, and still today, a requirement of that was that the system be inspected before it can go into use. That system was never inspected. Our record stops at the permitting stage. However, the system was installed as it exists today. So at some point, the cabin was constructed, I would assume close to 1970 when the system was permitted. And later, the garage was built between the years of 2004 and 2012 by the current owners, the Lawsons. The second story contains finished living space that has been used historically as a bedroom and a bathroom, and it's also plumbed to the existing septic system without approvals. No septic permit was acquired for that plumbing connection. And in 2014, the Lawsons opted to apply for a septic permit to replace the septic tank. It was getting old. It was an old metal tank. I don't think it was in a state of failure, but it was. They did decide to replace it. So when they applied for that permit, we issued it with a condition that the existing drain field be inspected retroactively. Portions of it were to be excavated upon inspection of the new septic tank, so that we could verify that drain field met the required setbacks and basically set the record straight for the Lawson's permit record. We came out and inspected the drain field, or sorry, the septic tank inspection, and we weren't able to approve the inspection because the drain field was not uncovered for inspection at the time that we were there. And the other thing we noticed, one of our staff, Dan Foltz, while on site for that inspection, was that the garage appeared to have living space above on the second level. This is a picture that he took that day. I should back up a second and note that Dan, when he was writing the septic tank replacement permit, noticed in the property database that a second dwelling was listed in the tax records for the property, so he asked Mr. Lawson about that. At that time, Mr. Lawson said, no, it's just a garage, there's no finished living space in that garage. So just to point that out. After the inspection, which we were unable to approve because the drain field was not uncovered, we received a letter from the Lawsons questioning our legal basis for requiring inspection of the drain field. That was part of the health code requirement that all systems must be inspected and approved. So we sent a letter to the Lawsons explaining that and asking them, reminding them that the drain field still needed to be inspected and asking them for more information about the second level of the garage. We never received a response to that letter, so in October of 14, we issued a formal notice of violation with an order to take corrective action. Basically, that corrective action we ordered was the same as the letter sort of asked for, was the inspection of the drain field and more information about the garage interior. The applicant, the Lawsons, requested an administrative hearing after receiving the notice of violation. That hearing was held, and at that hearing they requested time to allow for a site evaluation on the property to determine if a suitable location existed on the lot that would possibly accommodate a new system allowing increased use and one that would meet setbacks. That request was granted, and our director at the time, Jim Carlson, amended the order to reflect that. So we performed that site evaluation in 2015. The findings of that site evaluation were that installing a drain field on that lot that would meet all setbacks was not possible because of the steep slopes that were present on the lot, and also the soil profiles that we dug in multiple places on the lot showed shallow bedrock less than 4 feet deep, which is another required setback for a drain field. So it was determined that there was not a suitable place within the confines of the lot for a system to meet all setbacks. After that information came to light, the Lawsons requested another amendment to the order, asking for more time to pursue a replacement system. Because here's the thing, the health code does allow us to permit replacement systems that do not meet setbacks. So new or increased use is required to meet setbacks in the health code. However, should the Lawsons have wanted to replace the drain field in a different location on the lot, the department would have been able to issue that permit. The problem here was with this particular project, there wasn't a better spot on the lot for the drain field. Again, because of steep slopes, bedrock, there's a well on the property. There just isn't another spot. But so that being said, at that point in time, they elected time. They wanted time to pursue a replacement option for that drain field. So Mr. Carlson did amend the order again. In February 2016, they asked to amend the order again for more time to retroactively inspect the drain field. I think the thought there was, we don't know for sure if this drain field does or does not meet setbacks. We knew it was unlikely, but I think the Lawsons wanted to rule out the approvability of that system and just see if it met setbacks. So again, the order was amended one more time to allow time for that. And in April 2016, I visited the property. A portion of the existing drain field was uncovered and found to too close to all the things that we've talked about, the surface water, the slope, the foundation, and the tank. So I was unable to approve that inspection for those reasons. The next thing that happened was, from there, the Lawsons applied for this variance, and we received that application in June of 2016. And then July 2016 to April 2018, there was 3 different rounds of back and forth between the health department and the applicant, where we asked for more information, specifically on the environmental impacts of the proposal. We needed more information to be able to fully assess that. We also needed more information about the property itself. At the first administrative hearing, we were told by Mr. Lawson that the garage did not have plumbing. That it had internal plumbing, but that plumbing was not routed to the existing septic system, that it did not have a permanent water supply. And as we went through the variance application process, the information that was submitted to us was different than that. We ended up finding out during the application review that the garage is in fact plumbed to the existing septic system, that happened in 2012 without permits, and that there was a water supply. I should point out that just a few days ago, Steve Kilbreth, their representative from Casnias and Associates, reached out to me and updated the application by saying that the application shows a hard plumbing connection to the garage. I'm told that the reality is that is a soft plumbing connection, basically a garden hose fixture, so that it's a temporary water connection to the garage is what I'm told now. That hasn't been verified either way by the department, but that's something I just wanted to point out.
For the water, not the septic.
That's correct, the water supply. The information we have still says that the wastewater is plumbed to the existing septic tank. Now remember, we inspected that septic tank because it was replaced in 2014. We didn't see a second connection to that tank, but there was a portion of the ground that was not excavated. So if you look closely at our inspection report from that time, it's possible that we didn't observe that second connection because the ground wasn't excavated there. The department has never observed that second connection. We're basing that off of that variance application.
Jim, I mean, don't you think that second connection is a wide connection and plumbing, and that there's still only one entry into the septic tank?
Yes. Yeah, that's what I was kind of trying to get at. Sorry, I didn't do a great job of explaining. I would assume that it's a wide connection. I don't know. It's possible that it's routed into the internal plumbing of the house as well, and that it all exits the house through one common outlet. You see that sometimes. In May 2018, we determined that the variance application was complete. We scheduled the hearing for last month, and the applicants requested, due to some scheduling conflicts, that the hearing be rescheduled for today. So the health code, as you're aware, talks about the criteria that the board must find are met in order for the variance to be granted. I'm going to run through these and how this project, how these details pertain to this project, and just go through that. So the first is that the variance must be necessary to address extraordinary conditions that the applicant could not have reasonably prevented. Remember, we kind of have two main components to this variance request, so that's kind of how I framed this discussion here. The first part is the setbacks for the existing drain field. Remember, they're asking for approval for the existing drain field. Their argument here is that they were not the property owners when the septic system was installed. That's true. The department agrees that the Lawsons could not have reasonably prevented this situation in terms of the drain field setbacks. However, the applicants did construct and plumb this garage. The department finds that the applicants could have reasonably prevented that from happening. So the department found, as you'll see in our staff report, that we don't see this particular condition being met for that part of the variance request. Second, compliance with the requirement from which the variance is requested would result in undue hardship to the applicant. In terms of setbacks, the applicant states that the property would be rendered completely unusable if the system can't be approved. To clarify, we can issue a replacement permit despite not meeting setbacks, like I sort of mentioned earlier. So there is an alternative. However, it's not a better alternative because permitting a replacement drain field that's closer to the well or just as close to the lake, it just doesn't improve the situation. So the department finds that this criterion is met in terms of that, just that reality, the way it all comes together. The existing location is just as good as what a replacement location would be on this lot. In terms of the additional wastewater connection, the applicant states that without the connection approval, deconstruction of that space would be required. It's true that some deconstruction would be required without that approval. They would have to remove that plumbing, but the department has agreed to offer a use agreement on the structure. And use agreements are a common thing that the department does when we have finished living space in a structure. Remember, septic systems are sized based on number of bedrooms under residential circumstances. So it's fairly common for the department to allow a use agreement stating that a structure's interior won't be used for sleeping. That use agreement is a lot of times filed, especially in a circumstance like this, filed with the clerk and recorder's office, made part of the permit record, notarized, etc. In this case, the use agreement that the department would require would say that the space cannot be used for sleeping, cannot house cooking facilities, and cannot have plumbing of any kind. So there is an option there for the applicants to keep some of that living space and use it for a hobby room or an office, that sort of thing. The alternatives, or the third criterion is that no alternatives to comply with these requirements are reasonably feasible. In terms of the setbacks, like I said, there isn't a better place on this lot for a drain field. I'll get into it later, but the applicants have shown that the existing drain field's location does not represent any risk to public health or the environment, as long as it's not subject to increased use. So the department is comfortable with the current location of the drain field despite not meeting those setbacks. So we feel that that criterion is met in terms of the setbacks, but not in terms of the additional connection, because removal of the bathroom and the associated water and wastewater connections, we feel is reasonably feasible in this case. The variance requested has to be not more than the minimum needed to address the extraordinary condition. Neither of these requests are more than the minimum needed. I'm sorry, I take that back. The first is not more than the minimum needed. However, the request to keep the plumbing connection, the department, when we reviewed it, found that it was more than the minimum needed to address the circumstances. So this is the part that gets into the actual public health and environmental concerns of the variance request. The board has to find that granting the variance won't contaminate any actual or potential drinking water supply. There are a lot of properties up here that pull water from the lake, just to point that out. The board has to find that the proposal won't cause a public health hazard as a result of access to insects, rodents, or other possible carriers of disease. Won't cause a public health hazard by being accessible to persons or animals. won't violate any law or regulation governing water pollution or wastewater treatment and disposal, except for the rule that the variance is requested from, and won't pollute or contaminate state waters. Won't degrade state waters unless authorized under state law, or cause a nuisance due to odor, unsightly appearance, or other aesthetic considerations. The other section of the health code that's applicable here is the board shall not approve the variance if the applicant's proposal will adversely affect the health, safety, or welfare of any individual or cause adverse environmental effects greater than those effects commonly permitted by the code. Sorry that's so wordy, I just don't know any other way around that. In terms of all those environmental assessments, or environmental concerns, we find in terms of the setbacks that those criteria are all satisfied. We base that on the applicant's submittal of several different analyses, including nitrate sensitivity modeling, which looked at the impacts of the source to groundwater and surface water, as well as phosphorus breakthrough modeling, which did the same. Both of those passed and showed that the location of the system did not pose increased risk beyond what would be typically permitted or violate any of those environmental concerns. They even submitted virus reduction modeling for the drain field to show that pathogen contribution by the discharge source wasn't of concern. The one thing that should be noted, though, is that all those analyses did not factor any increased use. They looked at the 3-bedroom main house, and which was what was originally permitted by the department. They didn't factor in any potential increased use that the second detached garage might pose as part of this. So because of that, we found that in terms of the additional connection, these environmental protections were not satisfied, and so those conditions we found were not met. Ultimately, our recommendation is we request that the approval of the variance pertaining to the minimum setbacks be approved by the board with the following conditions. And the second part of the variance request we recommend be denied by the board, and that was specifically requesting the approval of that wastewater connection of the garage to the septic system. These are the conditions we recommend that the board approve with the variance. By August 31st, the applicants must execute a use agreement for the detached garage, stating that the structure will not be used for sleeping, house cooking facilities of any kind, or be used as an independent living unit. That use agreement must be filed with the clerk recorder's office so that it runs with the land, and it will be binding upon future property owners. And it also will include authority for the department to inspect the interior of that structure with reasonable notice. The second condition we are recommending is by the same date, August 31st, the applicants must permanently deconstruct the bathroom and all associated plumbing in that detached garage. The unapproved connections to the existing septic system and the well, which we now know is temporary, must be physically and permanently abandoned. Those modifications would require inspection and approval by the health department. Third, prior to completion of the above requirements, the applicants may not generate or discharge wastewater from the detached garage or utilize that structure for sleeping, which would constitute increased use. Failure to comply with the conditions of the variance and any permit issued under the variance would void the variance approval. And the variance does not relieve the applicants of any obligations under local, state, and federal laws or regulations. Also, this approval of this variance would not constitute approval of any new or increased use on the property. So finally, with that said, the department requests a motion from the board to approve the first part of the variance request and with the conditions we proposed, and deny the second part of the variance request for the approval of the detached garage, sorry. Sorry, that was a lot.
I have one brief question. What constitutes increased use?
So
If they remodeled the existing home and added a bedroom and a bathroom, would it be viewed the same way?
It would be. The permit allowed 3 bedrooms, so if they proposed to add a 4th bedroom to that home, it would constitute increased use. In the health code, increased use is defined residentially as the increase of number of bedrooms or sleeping spaces. It's further defined as anything that will generate more wastewater. But residentially, it's most commonly looked at as per the number of bedrooms.
And I have a question. Is the water on this lot, is it a shared well from the adjacent? It is, I'm seeing, yes, okay. The one indicated on one of the exhibits.
Yes. Yes,
Adjacent to
that's what we're told, is the well is shared with a neighboring parcel.
Okay. I have a procedural question. The applicant can give a presentation.
No, the applicant should do the presentation now.
Okay. Any other questions from board for Jim? Okay, the applicant, do you have a presentation that you want to?
I didn't bring my PowerPoint.
You can just talk. We can do it the old way.
Madam Chair, members of the board, my name is Steve Kilbreth. I am retired from Montana Department of Environmental Quality, and I work 2 days a week for an engineering firm in Helena. My background is bachelor's degree, master's degree in geology, registered sanitarian from 1992 to when I retired in 2014. And in my DEQ tenure, I supervised the state DEQ subdivision program for 7.5 years. If you do that in dog years, it's like 56 years or something. and part of that time, for 2 years of that time, I also managed the public water engineering program. So I got involved with this variance to look at the technical aspect of it. There's several key things that need to be thought about here. And this home is a seasonal use home. You know, and seasonal use is defined as 60 days out of the year. So right now, this home is seasonal use, and it has always been seasonal use. It may remain that way or it may not, but today it's seasonal use. Your question about increased use is adding a bedroom and you increase flow from a bedroom. You then must increase the septic tank size, and you must increase drain fields for that. So I'm not sure that Jim made that clear, but if you increase use, you have to increase all those other things, okay? In the work we did, we used the conventional Montana DEQ non-degradation analysis, and those analyses do take into account a wide variety of flow. They are designed for a 2 to 5 bedroom. So if we evaluated all of our background non-deg and water quality work, it would have been, it's for 2 to 5 bedrooms. So if you had a 4-bedroom addition to this, it was taken into in our analysis of water quality, because those standard approaches are 2 to 5 bedrooms. Except the pathogen, the viral transport model just looks at the application rate of sewage to the soil at 0.4 gallons a day. So, but it does look at that. As I look at the variance, it seems to me that there's a couple of different options for the board to deal with this variance. One is to follow the direction of the health department, approve the existing house, and follow their path for the drain field, or for the garage. A different way of looking at the garage is if Mr. Lawson files that affidavit that says, I will not have a bedroom in it, I will not have a kitchen in here, it will only be used as a family room or a recreation room, then it does not add an increased source. The staff report said it's okay to go walk from the garage down the stairs to the house to use the restroom facilities because the garage is less than 200 feet from the house. So there's no difference in using restroom facilities in the garage versus using restroom facilities in the house for load on the system, as long as Mr. Lawson has signed that affidavit that says it won't be used for sleeping, and as long as you believe that he'll do that. So it's not an increased load. So it could be, your variance could approve the existing system, and it could allow use of the garage as long as there's no increased load. Increased load meaning sleeping and/or kitchen. Another condition you could do on the variance, and this is not one that the health department would like very much, but you could cut the plumbing where it exits the garage, and you could condition the variance with the installation of a 1,000-gallon holding tank. That holding tank would collect all effluent all sewage from the garage, and it's pumped when full. It would take a variance from you guys to grant a holding tank, and it would take a rewrite of the DEQ certificate of subdivision approval to add that to it, which with your variance to allow it, that would allow that COSA to happen. So right now, the simplest way forward for our client is he files the affidavit. He does not do any additional use of that room except a family room like he's been doing right now. And you leave the plumbing in place. Do you have any questions?
So what is this room used for now?
It's a big empty room, and it's got a bathroom with a hand sink, a toilet, and a shower in it. And in the past, it had somebody sleep in it here and there because there was a bed in it. But that was
It's
before.
not used very often.
It's not used very often. The entire cabin is used 40 to 60 days out of the year. And how many times that room gets used, I don't know. And like I said, I only learned this week that the water line plumbing to it was a garden hose.
I think the challenge is that, is the seasonal use, actually. Cabins get more concentrated use, as you said, it's seasonal. When you've got a cabin on the lake, your friends and family are gonna come, and if there's a flat spot, there's gonna be somebody laying on it. And so it's the seasonal use that actually overuses the capacity, where if it was spread out over 12 months, the same number of people using the potty would not have the same impact. So in some ways, the seasonal use is the challenge. And you know, these folks have owned the place for 17 or 18 years, and future owners, and I'm confident that realtors are not going to advertise it as a place that you can't sleep, even though that would be understand that the agreement would go with the land. But, so in some ways, I'm more concerned about seasonal use than not.
Because I understand the way those agreements are put together, and they're filed at the clerk and recorder's office, so they come up in any title search. So anybody who would purchase that land in the future would see it. And if he files that agreement, then he's going to be saying to you, I won't let anybody sleep up there. And that's why I say, you know, that agreement, you have to have a level of trust to say, this agreement has meaning and we believe it.
In my 18 years of experience as a county commissioner, I can tell you that people don't read. So it's not putting anything on this gentleman at all.
I have a question. It's for either one of you guys. What is going to be done there? I mean, there's going to be a septic tank replacement? Or has that been?
It has been replaced.
The septic tank has been
done.
replaced.
Okay, and we're talking about a replacement area, but.
So we're talking about the existing septic system that is there, that was installed in 1970, that was uncovered and seen to be functioning and didn't have all the proper setbacks met. There is really truly no other place on the lot. It's steep and it's shallow soil. So we're talking about allowing use of the existing septic system.
Okay, thank you. And then I had one other question. The slope that I think is to the north, is that a natural slope or a man-made?
The slope to the north, the drain field, the septic system itself is in a cut.
Okay.
That the house, that was created to put the house on. And that, there's a cabin on either side of the Lawsons. There's more than likely a septic system on either side of this in the same cut, because the land is so steep and there's really no soil.
But the cut was seemingly done in the 70s?
The cut was done in the 70s.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
And the septic systems are in the fill on the soil side, you know, up where there's fill.
I might just caution the board with regard to use agreements. They are filed with the clerk and recorder, and they do run with the land. But right now, for example, there's a litigation occurring where there was a use agreement that was filed, and there was not a complete removal of the bathroom and the sink situation. That it was very similar, a detached garage unit. The use agreement was filed, but then it was sold by that owner, and there was not a title search done by the buyer. And the buyer didn't know about the use agreement and put reconnected everything right back in, and now there's a piece of litigation about whether or not there was notice of the use agreement and whether or not there was fraud in the sale. So the fact that a use agreement gets recorded does not mean that it's going to be complied with, particularly when you have an established years of communications that are not necessarily truthful. And it puts an incredible burden of enforcement on the health department to be basically having to go to these people repeatedly and try to start enforcing something that is really outside of the purview of the health department, which is ensuring that they're doing what they say that they're going to be doing. The resources that go into that are incredible.
And just for the benefit of the newer members of the board, this type of request of asking for additional use after installing it is extremely common. And while I respect your upcoming decision, the history has been, for many of the reasons given, it has been denied. So just the issue of fairness and consistency in the county and the application of the rules, I would just like to give you that background.
There's also the fact that Missoula County is one of two, I think, that has a building code enforcement program, and all of this, while the concrete was poured in 2004, when we didn't have building codes. We have building codes as of May of 2006. So both the construction person and the homeowners should have paid attention to what the rules were, and they, you know, as they say, ignorance of the law is no excuse. Construction should have known, a construction company in Missoula County should have known, even if they weren't from Missoula County, they should pay attention. It's your responsibility. So the plumbing should have been inspected because it didn't happen until at least 2010. So there's a lot of things could have been prevented if people had followed rules and done their research. So while the attorney's letter talks about, you know, it's unfair that it will degrade their value of this property, they got themselves into it. So, and I think the other thing that Mr. Kilbreth just said about the capacity of the land, it's steep slopes and shallow soil. We've looked around, there's not a better spot to put it. So if the system fails, where is it going to go? You know, it doesn't seem like there's even a replacement space. So to me, the capacity of the land, those steep slopes and shallow soil are even more reason to not approve this additional use on a seasonal facility.
Again, I would like to point out that if the building is used only as a family room, recreation room, and not as a bedroom. It's not additional use. It's not additional use as defined by the health code or by, DEQ rules. It's not. And then you have to put your faith in the use agreement.
Sorry, but sometimes our past experience flavors our decision making.
Any other board questions for Mr. Philbrook?
One other item would be, you could leave that building in place. You could condition your variance approval with requiring a holding tank for the garage. And that way, there is no additional wastewater leaving that building. It goes into a holding tank. That holding tank is pumped when full. Missoula County Code doesn't allow holding tanks, so it would take a variance, and I'm sure Shannon's back here probably getting ready to throw something at me. It would take a variance, but it's a tool in the toolbox, to pull out and use to help solve a problem in a situation.
But that's not a variance that's been applied for,
To me,
I don't feel like we
if
just
the
put that
homeowner
up.
wants to request that variance, they need to bring it back and request it. I don't think we should be making that decision on the fly.
because
It wasn't noticed either.
No, it wasn't noticed.
Yeah, and we would want staff to evaluate that. With that in mind, is that what,
I don't know.
is that a request? I don't.
We may come back with a request. That's what it sounds like. If we want that, we would need to come back with a request pending the outcome of your vote on today's decision.
Which could potentially affect the outcome.
Well,
But a future decision then would amend the current one.
Right, if our requirement today is to deny
Right.
deny the request and require that all the facilities be taken out of the building, they'd have to come back with a different request that amended that.
Okay.
Or approve the request with the use permit.
Did you want,
Any other board?
you want the motion
questions?
before you ask for public comment?
Yeah.
Or I guess we could see if the applicant has somebody else they want to ask. I would move that we accept the recommendation from staff to grant the approval of the variance request pertaining to the minimum setbacks in section 10C with the conditions recommended in the staff report and proposed decision document, and deny the request for the approval of connection to the attached structure to the septic system, section 6, sub B, sub 6. Does it have all the conditions in here then, or do we need to talk about those?
You can
Deconstruction.
just reference the conditions in your motion.
And meet the conditions as recommended by staff regarding
Yes.
deconstruction.
Okay. Any board, further board questions or discussion on the motion on the table? Any other staff comments on the motion? Any public comments on the motion on the table?
I just have one is, we're protecting a similar watershed, and wastewater flows downhill, and we're protecting that lake. That's our job, is to protect public health and safety, including aquifers, lakes, and streams, and really looking at the increased use or potential for increased use. I have a cabin that's had too many people sleeping in it off and on. When you've got a cabin, people like you. And I think that we need to look at the capacity of the system and the capacity of the land, and I think this is a reasonable request.
Are you ready?
Do you have a second?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. A
We don't-
second, need
we
a
don't do
second.
We don't need a
Okay,
second.
I don't think we usually do. We sometimes get them, but.
We'll take that down.
Okay, for the motion on the table, all those in favor signal with aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries.
That's all it was. Likewise.
So next item on the agenda is preliminary fiscal year 19 health fund cash budget. There's a letter, a memo, email, and the sheet to go along with this discussion.
Yes. Let me make sure I'm looking at the right one. Oh, heavens.
We've got it.
I thought last year's just in case, and then I found myself looking at it, excuse me.
At my office without my second packet.
Okay. I always find it difficult to look at a spreadsheet. There's really, a spreadsheet is built to help a person figure out numbers. And then we turn around and use it to somehow talk to you. And I know for myself that doesn't always work. So let me take a minute to try to orient you to the spreadsheet. Wow. Is there any way to... Here we go. Move it off screen a bit, but I need to see it to talk about it. Woo! Always feels like a drunk fest when you do that. Okay, many years ago, sometime in the last decade, we began presenting, I think with the advent of the Board Budget Committee as the department ruler, we began presenting an estimated and then finally an adopted proposal for our various types of cash, either spending, holding temporarily, spending ongoing, or reserving, and reserving. And this spreadsheet tries to show you how those numbers add up this year. If you see a number in italics, it is an estimate, and a number that is not in italics is pretty much final. Once in a while, an end of year will change. But that said, we had a lot of cash movement in the last year, some planned, some unplanned, and some was actually just a transfer to another fund. So I usually present this allocation proposal every May with the budget. This year we had so much movement, it really changed the flow in the different levels, most of it planned, that I really want to wait till the end of the year before I give you the final numbers and then ask you for any adjustments in the adoption of this. So we have two funds. What I will call our regular health operating fund that covers our annual budget is Fund number 2077, or we call it the health fund.
2270.
Is it?
Yep.
Thank you. 2077 is someone's phone number. 2270, it's that fund.
I'm just reading.
And our other fund is thank you, 4019 for capital reserve, and capital reserve only in association with the health fund. There are other reserves for the other funds, as you're familiar with, animal control, junk, so on, and they all operate a little bit differently. But our main premise is we don't want to spend large amounts of cash for regular operations, but we do want to save and reserve certain amounts of cash for future obligations and for a reserve and a buffer if we run into trouble, as we did last year. So we were very glad we saved that. So the way this works is on the left-hand column, I list all the things that we've in some way, shape, or form really already committed to saving. And then I carry those costs over here. Is it are we spending it one time? Are we spending it in an ongoing fashion, which we shouldn't be doing? or are we reserving it? Or if we're doing it in an ongoing fashion, it should be a small amount. And so usually every year, we are spending a little cash in an ongoing fashion. This year with the cuts, I cut the budget pretty hard so that we were careful to not spend anything planned from our cash, just to kind of recalibrate the flow. You'll also see, this is sometimes a little confusing, I've itemized the various grants, programs, whatever, which in one way or another have managed to keep a little cash, and then either by law or by policy, depending on the individual ones, we then reallocate that money back into that effort. Some of them, we could take that money and use them if we got into trouble. Some of them we couldn't. But in a policy way, the board has generally agreed if there's money that's been accumulated from a grant on tobacco control and there's no other dependencies on that, then let's reinvest it in tobacco control. How do we save some of this money? Sometimes we get fees, like here's our responsible alcohol service tax fees. We get them in one year, we want to be able to spend them in the next year. So on your budget, that looks like cash spending. It is cash spending, but the source of the money really came from the activity of collecting the fee. On tobacco, which is generally tobacco control, is generally a little bit more, I won't say luxuriant, but it's not, doesn't run real tight yet, like many of our other grants. You know, they just kind of ratchet themselves down. Tobacco, we get it on a deliverable basis. So if we accomplish our deliverables in less money than the state calculated, then we save that money. Most of our money doesn't come that way. It's a reimbursement basis. Okay? So this year, the commissioners require at least a 5% reserve, and that is calculated on, not on your expenditures actually, it's calculated on your revenues. So it's a little bit higher number than you're going to see if you calculated it on expenditures. And it's not much different than last year because we actually cut quite a bit this year. The board, several years ago, recognizing that usually most of our funding is not tax funding, and that's still the case this year, although we're getting close to 50-50 with the cuts of the fee funding. They wish to have a larger buffer. I certainly feel better with that, and so we do an extra 3%. That's this number. This number goes up every year a little bit, and this is really kind of probably not a true sinking fund, but it's every 13 years, sometimes 12, I'm not sure, our 2-week pay cycle, we actually get an extra one in the 12th or 13th year. And with an institution of this size, that can be a couple $100,000. So we've always budgeted, instead of the usual 2,080 hours for full-time work, we charge ourselves 2,088 hours. We take that 8 hours and we put it into this fund right here and we save it.
So, and I should know this, you know, looking at these years, year after year, is that 5/13 of the total, or is that just the amount for this year?
That is accumulated.
Okay.
So I did bring last year's sheet, but you can see that went up.
Okay.
Okay, so then down here, what I showed this year was a little bit different than, well, then I showed you what our actual ending cash was. Uh-oh, did I do that right? Debbie, you help me, I go between...
It's 17 and 18.
17, 18, 19.
Yeah.
It's a real number, I think.
Well, the one that we have says 17 and 18.
Oh, yeah.
You know what, I fixed this, Julie? I don't think I sent you the fixed one.
You did, I must
The numbers are the same.
inadvertently.
They're a little bit different, but they're not big, yeah.
No, but the 190
Yeah.
for the transfer is 188 on the sheet that we
Yeah,
have.
yeah. Now, I apologize for that. I updated it Tuesday night, and...
You might want to call yourself the health department too, instead of the health department.
What am I?
You're health.
Oh, wow. This is your Tuesday
If you're going to
night.
correct them.
This is your Tuesday night update, folks. Excuse me.
Okay.
Okay, why, now this is very unusual. You see how we go from a known 1.6 million of ending cash to an estimated end of 18 to 19? Most of that was planned. So before we knew we were going to get 223 West Alder, I asked you to start transferring money into this other fund, $325,000, so we could begin to save money for an expansion. Several months after that, not too many, we actually were able to act rather quickly, get the lease, put it in the budget, or amend the budget and pay for it. But we paid for it out of this fund. That drove the accounting department crazy because now they know they're looking at two different transfers. But I want you to see, when you see 300,000 moving in any direction, there to be a formal record, not my memory of why we did that. So we actually went from here and we moved the $325,000 for planning purposes. When it came time to pay on the lease, when that all came together really quickly, it was, I think, $285,000 to actually pay on the lease. So we took it both out of this. Okay. Now, this number, 744,571, is the number that we have, unless you change your mind somewhere in a break past practice, that we are committed to either spend one time, our only one time is $30,000, that we hope to do something with the front waiting room at least, and we carried that over from last year, and the rest is the savings that we just discussed. If we take this amount and we say out of that we're going to reserve this amount, we actually don't have enough. Why? The reason we don't have enough is we did move that $325,000 into this fund, and it is reflected in here. So what I will probably propose to you, when I have real numbers, because this is not a known number, that's a kind of a big if right now. That is the number that the county accounting is using for budgeting purposes. That's the number we need to use. This would be at least $188,000, so that we did have the adequate reserve in our annual operating fund. Debbie and I, as she's a member of the budget committee, discussed making it more than that, so we aren't moving little bits of money every single year. So I would see that we would be able to address this, we would be able to have in reserve for the purposes mentioned this amount, and we would reduce this total by whatever amount we. Sense.
In our primary discussion about, the transfer of the money is that it is not for ongoing operations. I mean,
Yeah.
That this is for these things, on this list, and that we're not using cash on an annual basis to fund
Right.
positions or things like that. It just means we need to take a hard look and make changes, so.
And then any interest generated from this cash in this particular fund reverts to the county general fund, which I believe is absolutely correct when you consider all the services that we get from the county. And
We pay your light bill, I think.
yeah, well, we do pay for computer services, we do pay for certain upgrades, we pay for remodeling, but yeah, the light bill, I'm sure we have a deal there. This amount, though, is really supposed to just sit there, and like, for example, when we did need to contribute on the air conditioning repair 2 years ago, we were able to have money to do that, or any major remodeling, which of course we just completed 3 years ago. So I'm not asking for action, but I'm asking for, is this making sense? Bring it back in August if we meet, but ask for action at our next meeting.
And then we'll go to the budget to make the fund transfers. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up, monthly update on strategic priorities. We are going to look at section 2, environmental health and conditions, goal 6, food safety.
These are 2 comments.
Hey everybody, how's it going?
Michael Dorshorst. I'm one of the sanitarians here. Some of you I don't know, so Rob I know. Good to see you. But I work for the licensed establishment team up here in environmental health. There's a lot of sanitarians on this floor. I'm one of them. We're broken up into specialty teams. I'm going to give you a real quick overview of what we've done as part of our licensed establishment strategic goal, and then go on from there. Take any questions. Most people would probably be upset that they had to follow a budget talk, but I'm really happy because the past 2 times I've had to do this, I followed suicide awareness and prevention. This is exciting.
It's all relative.
Yeah. So just real quick, this is, we established our strategic goal of food safety. We want to identify and work with 3 or more high schools to teach the students about food safety and then also teach them job skills. We looked at unmet needs for food safety training and then the current employers in the area and what they might need. Then the goal was to help teach the kids food safety, teach them job skills, and then also help local businesses. And then hopefully the goal would be to protect public health by training the teens and helping them be more employable, and then help the operators decrease costs so they would be encouraged to hire those people who are trained already by us. So initially we had to determine a few different metrics for the program, figuring out interests of employers and schools, identifying target school, the interests of those schools and students, creating the plan, or creating the pilot program, and then work in collaboration with that target school, deliver and evaluate that program, that pilot program, and then continue our collaboration on with a greater public school district and reach out to the other high schools, parochial high schools, private high schools, and even try and reach out to the homeschool high school age kids. And then adapt that program to a larger scale so we meet the needs of the entire community in Missoula County. And then finally deliver and evaluate. So follow through with that plan and then evaluate where we stood and how we're going to move into the future with it. So we've reached all these goals in the plan at this point. It was the 2016 through 2018 plan, and we're at the pinnacle of this. I'll give you some results of how we proceeded through this. So again, this jumps back a little bit to how it started. We initially started with food service operators and identifying what their challenges were with teens, what their food training preferences were, and then how eager they were to involve themselves in this strategic goal with us. We completed all those in the first year. And then we also needed to figure out a target school. Big Sky High School seemed to have the most interest in being the pilot program for this. Both the administration and faculty were excited to be involved in it. We surveyed 264 students, which is about 10% of the school population, on what their interest was in this program. So when we asked the question in that survey, likelihood of attending a food safety training, it was kind of depressing. It was about 50-50 on whether or not they would actually care about that. So our next question was, how would you like to come to a training if it would lead to a job? Boom. We had a lot more interest at that point. So that was a comparison between the two, whether the ghost shells are just if they wanted to come to the training, the filled-in shells are if they would get a job as a result of that training. So there was a big shift over to the likely side. We completed those goals. So our initial training at the target school, the red bars are how the students scored on our pre-assessment, and then the purple bars are how they scored on the post-assessment on both iterations of our original pilot program at the target school, Big Sky. This information for me was the most interesting because by a show of hands in those classes, 50% of those kids already worked in food service in Missoula County. 50% of those kids in both classes failed those tests on the pre-assessment. So
Which restaurants do they?
yeah. I'd say, well, we have a great online inspection service where you can go and you can read all the previous inspections at any restaurant before you go, and we highly recommend you do that. We'd like to see our work realized. So that was really encouraging, though, to see that the training seemed to stick with them, at least in the short term. Hopefully it'll translate into something long term for the county. That is yet to be seen. So we also evaluated the course after it was over, asking the kids to respond to those 7 questions. It was all really positive responses from the kids. They enjoyed the class. Alicia Johnson and I put this together. Alicia has just phenomenal institutional knowledge of food safety. She's also our ServSafe certified instructor for all of the certified food protection managers in Missoula County. So she helped me create that program. I was a teacher for a number of years in high school, so we thought it was kind of a natural fit for the two of us to work together on this project. The information we got coming out of it, the students really enjoyed it. I think how helpful was the employer portion of this course to your job. So when we finished our food safety training portion, the last half an hour, 45 minutes of the class, it extends to about 3 to 4 hours. The last half an hour, 45 minutes was the employers coming in and talking to the students in an open forum style about what it means to be a good employee, or even what it means to have a job. One of the most interesting stories when building this program we got from one of the employers was he hired a kid, 17, from Hellgate to come work at his place, his food facility. The kid never showed up for work when he was on the schedule. 2 weeks afterwards, the kid shows up at the job and is looking for his paycheck. And the operator told him, sorry, you never showed up, you never called us, we knew nothing about what happened to you, so I don't know why you're looking for a paycheck. He said, well, I was on the schedule, so I'm supposed to get paid. So that's not the way it works. So there's definitely concern about hiring teens in the food industry, and hopefully this is going to work to help change that for operators and teens. But that number, what I was getting at there is there were, like I said, about half the kids in each class already worked in food service. So them saying that the employer section wasn't necessarily as helpful as some of the other stuff was, I think is more skewed just because they already had a job. So they weren't really concerned about getting a job. But of the 75%, I think there was even a commensurate or higher level of excitement about the knowledge that they gained because some of our operators brought along applications, and some of the kids actually got jobs in the class by filling out the applications with the operators. So they went on to work at those facilities. So our next steps were to collaborate then on a larger scale for the 17-18 year, which we did, present that, and continue on looking and analyzing and adapting to student interest in the scheduling, and then also just proceed and evaluate. So how are we going to continue to move on with this program throughout this past year, 17-18, and then what that might look like in the future. And that's what we're doing now, is analyzing those results. So just a quick summary, the number of the Missoula City, or the Missoula County Public Schools participating students, we had over 350 participated in the program, which is about 10% of Missoula City County Public Schools high school population. And then the number who received certificates, nearly everybody who took the class received their certificate. They passed the final exam, which you had to have a 70% or higher, answer 7 out of the 10 questions correctly. The only ones who didn't were just kids who either left the program, weren't there at school for those 2 days, things like that. It wasn't that they didn't get the benefit of the classes if they were there. We had 4 high school programs, and I say programs only because Willard isn't a high school unto itself. It's a high school program that the students that go there are actually still graduating from their home school. They just attend school at Willard. So it was Big Sky, Hellgate, Sentinel, and Willard that were part of the program. I reached out to Valley Christian and Loyola quite a lot, trying to get them involved. There was interest, but it just could never follow through. I couldn't get anybody to get traction, to come back to me and actually schedule something and get us out there. There was really strong interest with Sealy Swan, and we worked with Cordes Valley Market up there. They were excellent about wanting to be the local operators who would come in and talk to the students. The principal at Sealy Swan, she was very, Ms. Pecorino, she was very interested in it because she said a lot of their students work locally at, it's a summer town, a lot of food places there. But again, we just could never quite get that connection going with them as hard as I tried to get them involved. It was just always a scheduling problem, or we've got testing this week so we can't do it, or kids are going to be gone this week or these days or this big sports event. So we want to keep reaching out to the parochial, private, and Sealy Swan in the future, trying to make those connections and get those classes started out there. But we did have about 7 participating operators with us that would come to our classes. We had the same operators who were coming a lot to all the classes to help us out, and they were just wonderful. I mean, couldn't have asked for better help.
By that you mean restaurants?
Yeah, food establishments, yeah. Some might be restaurants, others would just, like grocery stores.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Any questions?
I have a couple.
Go right ahead. Yeah.
So, I heard you say 2 things. I heard you say 3 or 4 hours, and I heard you say 2 days. So, is it spread over 2 days?
So we were totally open to adapting to whatever the school and/or particular instructor needed us to do. So it might be 1 hour over 4 days. It might be 1 class, 4 hours 1 day. It might be 2 days with 2 hours apiece. It was whatever they needed us to do.
It was during the school day then?
Yes, ma'am. And we also tried after-school programs. We just got 0 help with that.
I just wondered if you did any surveying of the providers or the operators afterwards to see what they thought and if they would be interested in potentially requiring people to go through the training first. I don't remember what they have to do in their restaurant. And if it was beneficial to them to have a little training under the belt, would they be interested in paying for time? Because I was wondering how much time it took for you guys to put this together.
Yeah, I'll answer the last part first. It did require significant investment of time initially. Once we had the program on its feet and rolling, then it was pretty easy to just roll it out over a couple hours and get it done without too much work on either side of that. Having said that too, a lot of our day is already broken up with many different things that we do. Quickly, license establishment deals with public accommodations, motels, hotels, tourist homes, bed and breakfast. We do body art, tattooing, piercing, permanent makeup, and all the different kinds of food services, both temporary and brick and mortars, mobiles, and pools and spas and water features, and school inspections, foodborne illness investigations. So it's difficult to find time during our day to do extra things, but at the same time, for the things like this that feel really important, the feedback we get is really important, we do make the time for it. Whether or not we get compensated for that time in the future is an open question, whether or not we want to. On a larger scale, if it meant, the program went forward, whether we donated the time or whether we got paid for it, I think all of us would say we're happy to donate the time. But there may be interest on a larger scale for operators to help compensate some of that. We did we sent out notices to our facilities that consistently had very safe inspection reports because we didn't really want to reach out to people who were struggling to start with, because that may not send the right message in the program. So of the people that responded when we sent out to the operators, we had a core group of about 4 or 5 that were really interested in helping, and they are continuing to track on their own for us what kind of a turnaround they see from the students. Are they seeing an increase in the numbers of applicants of these students? Are they showing their certificates they got from us in their application packets? Do they actually get hired? How are they performing afterwards? So yes, those are all important questions we hope to continue to answer.
I have a question. Is the 4 hours of training, is it just classroom style, or are there hands-on demonstrations and activities?
Absolutely, very good question. Yes, there's a little bit of everything. It starts off, having been a teacher, I use 5 E's engagements for science training in the classroom, and so it starts off with what we think, and the kids have to end up thinking from their responses to us. It's a series of pictures of everything that we've seen in Missoula County when we go on an inspection. We take a lot of pictures and then include it into our trainings. And the kids are suitably grossed out by it. And they always ask the same question, where should I go to eat? Refer them to our website if we look at our inspections online. And we also always want to give operators a chance to change their ways. Everybody can make mistakes. Everybody has a bad day. So when we come in for our inspections, it's a snapshot of one moment in time all throughout the year. So people can have a bad day. So we don't want to throw operators under the bus by telling people, avoid this restaurant, because everybody can have a chance to get better. And we want everybody to get better. So besides that initial engagement, then we go on to do both some lectures, small group work, demonstrations. I have my own pet tapeworm in a jar named Clarice that I pass around to the class and show her. We pulled it out of some food here in Missoula County. And it's very interesting, very exciting for the kids. We try and make it as much as possible. Some, they're kids, some love it, a few, aren't so excited about it, but I think at the end of the day, the results from the post-assessment analysis was pretty good.
I was just going to ask the extent to which I think you've addressed it, your teaching experience helped, because I definitely want these kids to have the training. I wouldn't want to be the one doing it, so good job.
It's been a lot of fun. I've had to answer a lot of personal questions, but that's okay.
So do you demo the one where people are taking your money with their gloves on? I had that happen one time in a drive-in restaurant. They took my money with their gloves on. I thought, well, you're protected.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what it's about. Personal protection, not customer.
Yeah, there's two sides to that glove. You got to keep them straight.
And they do, both our training and pre- and post-assessments target the big 5 safety concerns for our food inspections on cooking temperatures, hot and cold holding temperatures, cross-contamination issues, health and hygiene of the staff, and its sources. We do hit all that pretty hard.
So I won't say it on the television, but I'll tell you later that I just noticed in a grocery store the other day that they have a new thing that I think with all the episodes with salad being contaminated this year is asking for trouble. So it's a bin with a lid. It's a, what do you call it? It's plastic, but it's shredded lettuce and some tongs there, and you fill your own bag. And it just looks to me like it's waiting for contamination.
Gotcha.
I don't think it's a very good one. I'll let you know where it is.
Thank you. Yeah, there are ways to do that safely, so we want to make sure it's being done.
And maybe it is, it's just I'm never going to buy it.
Yeah, consumer awareness is key. We can't be everywhere all the time, and we do, like I said, a yearly inspection, and we may not see a place again for another year unless there's a complaint. So we really rely on the public to inform us of things that they see out there, and that's another thing we stress in the class. And, we pass out our cards and say, contact us anytime you see something that doesn't feel right. Let us know. Anything else?
Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much.
On to number 7. Julie, I think you're up. Instructions to complete survey for Director Leahy's performance evaluation for fiscal year 18.
So just a really quick run through, especially for the benefit of Pam, who hasn't been involved with the evaluation process in the past. The board does do an annual performance evaluation for Ellen, and for Ellen's evaluation, we don't use SurveyMonkey because the health department's account is not set up in a way that we can keep the evaluation results confidential. Whereas for your own self-evaluation as a board, we do use SurveyMonkey. Because we don't use SurveyMonkey, what you received in your packets yesterday and what you will receive from me today by email is a survey form that's prepared in Word to fill out the form. I love to get them electronically if that's how you want to submit them, but you can also do a print copy. And if you complete it electronically to mark your rating for a given question, you can either bold the rating number or underline it. Of course, if you're doing it by hand, you can just circle it. And if you do it electronically, remember to save your changes. Once in a while, someone fills one out, and the file they send back to me, it's still blank, so they didn't remember to save. So it's pretty simple to do and go through. When you do complete the survey, if you prefer to send back a print copy, just send it anonymously to my attention here at the health department. If you send it by email, I do have a process I use so that I don't know whose response belongs to a given individual, and we're able to maintain anonymity so that nobody's pinpointed as to what their response is. The deadline this year is August 6th. I believe that's a Wednesday. And the deadline is firm. The one challenge every year is we need to have at least 4 participants involved in completing a survey form so that we can go ahead and then conduct the evaluation. So turn them in by August 6th. Then at the next board meeting, which may or may not be in August or might not be until September, that's the time when you'll receive the results back and actually review them with Ellen. There is a scoring tool that I use that's a spreadsheet, and tally all the scores so that you can see how it all works out. So either August or September at the regular monthly meetings, you'll do the evaluation. Ellen has today provided you with a copy of the outcome of her activities for fiscal year 2018 so that you can review that as you make your responses on your survey. And then at the meeting in which you conduct her review in closed session, she'll give you a list of new goals for you to approve for fiscal year 19. And your action on her review and your approval of her new set of goals is then done in open session. So you start in closed session, then you jump into open session to take your action, and that's all there is to it.
Julie, will you be sending them an electronic version of my
Yes,
goals?
yes.
Too? Okay, thanks. It's always fun to get those out and see what we were thinking.
And Julie, just for me, are these questions the same or similar to ones that we have looked at in the past?
They are identical. The board reviewed the evaluations both for Ellen and for your own board evaluation back in 2012. And at that point in time anyway, the decision was everybody was happy with just continuing to use the same information. And I should mention, Ellen, of course, fills out a self-evaluation form, which you'll get that information as part of, so that you have it for your actual evaluation activity. And then there are 4 staff members, those of us who report directly to Ellen, evaluate her as well, and you see our scores as well. And then in the end, after you've acted, I submit all of the confidential results to HR for Ellen's record. So.
And I hesitate to do this a little bit without Ross here, and because I recognize that there's change both on the board and change in staff, and so of course, perceptions and lenses through which people see things change. But because these are the same questions we keep looking at year after year, I might be interested in seeing trends.
Mm-hmm.
If we've been looking at these same questions for 5 years, we have a data set, and
Sure.
it'd be interesting to see the trends,
Mm-hmm.
both in self and board and staff evaluations, if that's possible.
Yeah, we can certainly try to put that together. We can do that more easily if we can get responses back. So.
And I can tell from past
It's
experience,
completely
you all will be
unreasonable.
reminded many times about that, so.
And I will be sending out probably a weekly reminder. It's very easy in the summer to get involved with many other things and forget about the activity. But yeah, I would be happy. How far back would you like to go?
5 years if I've been
Okay.
looking at the same questions.
Sure.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Next up, Director's Report and Accreditation Update.
There's a couple bulleted points here. I'm just going to speak to the first 2, and the other 2 can go under other agendas later today. So we do want to get the best sense of board availability for the August, what would be the regular meeting on August 16th, if that's possible to do. And of course, only 4 of you are here right now.
And I won't be here.
You won't be here. So there's 2 that won't be
I'm
there.
pretty sure I will. Give me 2 seconds.
Right now, we don't have a,
I'm in town if you need it.
okay.
So far, I am showing in town.
Okay, thank you. The other, and I think you should have received by now, I hope it went through on your computer, the confirmed strategic planning date for board and management team on the 5th of September from 10 to 2. We'll have lunch in the middle of that. I will,
Yeah, and I won't be able to be there till.
after 11 sometime.
Yeah.
Although you are a member of the committee that is going to meet with the division directors, if I can get all that set up so that you're helping to build the materials we'll put in front of you for consideration of the plan. So we won't write the plan, but we won't start with a blank sheet either. So I'll be working on that date. The place is to be determined. This room is usually worked. I'm just not sure we can have it. I'll do my other updates on the others because I know that we need to get, well, I don't see Travis in here. So I'll go ahead and just give you another. Preparations for wildfire smoke. If we have an August meeting, Sarah Cofield will come and unfortunately probably be talking about active smoke conditions, but she couldn't be here today. I asked her to give me a little update on the work of the past year in between seasons. She continues to work at making our community smoke ready or wildfire smoke adaptable, working with Climate Smart Missoula and others in the community, including the schools. Currently, Climate Smart has 65 filters. We would use about 2 of them in a room this size. So that's the type of filter I'm talking about, or the size I'm talking about right now, kind of 2 in a classroom, in a cache. The department has built up its cache to 123 filters. Of course, that won't harden the whole community. That's for either daycares or schools that, for whatever reason, their main HVAC won't do the job. Or they're really in a bad plume of smoke, as some of them were last year. Funding for that cache, which is almost 200 now, comes from the United Way monies that were collected by United Way with multiple donors for wildfire response. Our Public Health Emergency Preparedness Fund is where we, in an emergency fashion, bought our first Climate Smart. Initially, some of those that were actually given out for keep, not for loan, were purchased by hospitals. They're working on gathering info about daycares. Daycares we would see as, again, the smaller the person, the more protection, or higher priority there is for protecting that little person's lungs. And so, of course, that's daycares, and daycares, for as tight as school budgets are, daycares are much more marginal. So they're working on gathering that info. They will send letters to them advising them on what they can do with their own funds. They will follow up with a phone call, and if necessary, depending on the circumstances, will actually loan out to those that haven't found another means as needed. They will then do the same with long-term care homes, but we would not be looking at loaning out. We expect those facilities could have their own resources once they're informed of what to do. They've met with Mark Thane with Missoula County Public Schools and talking with the schools and making sure their new buildings have a MERV filtration. It stands for maximum efficiency, something, something. We'll look at our engineer, but maximum efficiency in the filtering of at least 13, they're finding that hospitals generally go with 17 to 19. Regular construction, when you're not looking at wildfire smoke, you go with an 8 or a 9, so somewhere in the middle. And they're advising that the new construction and those that could be retrofitted in any way have at least that level of filtration. And she'll go over some indoor-outdoor data tracking, which you'll find very compelling as to the need for indoor air filtration. With that, I'll save the other item and we can talk about our big news about the water quality district. So could move on to 9 and 10 for Health Board. Thank you.
Can I ask a question? And you may not know, but I was curious. I mean, this is going to be, I think, the first year that we've sort of widely deployed indoor, hopefully we don't have to, right? But widely kind of deployed indoor air filters in a somewhat strategic way. Are we going to be doing any indoor air quality monitoring specifically where we're deploying filters
Yes, we
to
already-
see? I mean, just a lot our experience with the Children's Museum, you know, an enclosed indoor space where you think you can clean the air might not be the reality. And, you know,
Right.
in a building like this where there are communicating ceilings and stuff, how effective
Right.
are we actually
Right.
cleaning indoor air?
Exactly.
There's
So,
probably not a lot of data out there
yeah.
to guide that.
There is data data are plural, excuse me, that was collected both by Climate Smart and this department. I don't think we have all of what UM collected with indoor, they call them little data trackers.
So we did last
And we do
season,
have
a little
some, we happen to, you know, they weren't put forward in any sort of data collection plan, but you can see differences in buildings based on their filtration. But for the most part, the data that were collected, where you don't have a specific filtration level, it's just mirrors the outdoor, maybe a couple points less. I mean, it's bad.
Yeah.
It is not. You know, what we've been saying, go indoors. Maybe indoors is better because you're maybe not running, have a
But,
high
I mean, I
activity
think
level.
In terms
So
of
we're gonna
using
do
a
more of
limited
that.
scarce resource, do we
Right.
know, we can walk in and look at a particular facility and
Right.
say, us putting indoor filters in here isn't going to help you versus another building it might.
Yeah,
And how do we know?
Like somebody with a really tall ceiling, it's not going to be as effective.
right,
Yeah,
right.
stuff,
So we're
stuff
even.
like that. I mean, we're not going to filter every space in Missoula. How do we pick the spaces
Right.
that we can make the air the safest?
So there's actually a outlined plan, I forget what we're calling it, it's got different names, that we outlined at the end of last season after we did our action report, and Sarah and Climate Smart have been following that outline, trying to flesh out that plan with the idea that it would come to the board. Time flew, here we are. But there's been progress on the ground to get ready for what we think is inevitable. She'll tell you more about that, so, thank you.
Okay. Next up is public comments on items not on the agenda. Seeing none, any other board and staff comments on items not on the agenda?
I'd just like to bring up the community's response to the flood events this spring. Last Thursday night, I helped debag sand from the last 5 pallets that were sitting there anyway, from the Tower Street area. And Greg Robertson was out today with the Corps of Engineers, the levee, the Orchard Homes levee, so that's from Reserve Street to Tower area. Has about $1 million in damage from the water being up so high so long. So of that, Missoula County would be required to pay $200,000 to fix it, if that's what the numbers come out to. And then just, you know, reasons for regulations, I guess, because we do have some regulations for, you know, building in floodplains. And of course, most of that area that was affected in the Tower Street area was not, a lot of those houses were there before anybody started talking about where floodplains are. But where it used to be that we were concerned when the water hit 10.5 feet going through town, after the water came up, went down, and then came back up, it was 7.5 feet that now affects Tower Street. So a 3-foot drop in what affects,
Protection.
because it made some new old channels. So there will be, and here's the other interesting thing with FEMA. So you submit all kinds of numbers as number of houses that were affected, dollar amounts, all of those things. But if a house is a rental
Doesn't matter, doesn't
or a
count.
business, they don't count. So, you know, there were several, and of course, it wasn't just floodwater, it was also groundwater that really impacted some folks without public sewer. And those were rentals, a lot of them, so just interesting data, but we'll be having more community conversation about So now what do we do? Of course, people think somehow we have the wherewithal to come and save them, and we don't, and because the numbers don't reach right, we won't be able to probably buy a lot of them out either.
Does a trailer count as a rental?
Usually, unless you own it.
Well, but you probably don't own the ground.
No.
Right.
Well, I guess
But if
it's
you
not
own the
trailer,
trailer,
but
if the water touches, I think even the floor of the trailer, then it somehow gets counted. So.
Of course, in this case, the water took the ground away from under the trailer, so
Right.
the trailer's in
Yeah, we 3 of them washed downstream. It'll be interesting to see
where that surface.
what pieces, parts show up
Yeah,
this summer.
yep, big year.
But
Lots of-
there was a huge community effort, though. I'd just like to publicly thank the community that some folks put in months of work on the sandbagging and coordinating of that.
Okay. With that, we'll adjourn as the Board of Health and reconvene as the Water Quality District Board. And first up is to welcome and congratulate Travis as the Water Quality District Supervisor. Yeah.
So we are very, very, very excited to have Travis as the Water Quality District Supervisor. I'm glad he decided that he wanted to do it. He is going to be fabulous. A lot of you have worked with Travis for years and years. He's been with the Water Quality District for 15 years and really has been involved with almost everything the Water Quality District has done. And so now he gets to see a new side of it, the administrative budget, not that you haven't done some budget stuff, but accreditation. We're very excited to welcome him to the management team. Thinks that he'll be a great addition to strategic planning. So we just couldn't be happier that Travis is our new Water Quality District Supervisor.
Thanks, Travis.
Thank you, and I'm excited to be in this position. The district and the department and this board have really tackled some difficult issues and been very progressive, and I look forward to that continuing. So thank you for the warm welcome. So just an update on our last Water Quality Advisory Council meeting. There were a couple action items that they took care of between the last 2 meetings, and one of those was, speaking of levies, was a letter to the city council. City is looking at a new rate for their stormwater utility, and that's going to be based on a facility plan. And part of that facility plan is dealing with the levees through town. And this stormwater utility will be charged with maintaining the levees. There is a little bit of controversy on the type of vegetation management that's used in levees, whether to remove the trees or let the trees grow. And there's quite a bit of newer research that says these trees actually provide some benefits to levee stability depending on how they're managed. So the advisory council wrote a letter asking that that a vegetation management plan be developed for the levee system rather than a more drastic vegetation removal plan. They also suggested, this was a really good suggestion, so with the dioxin sampling that took place at the mill, there's a newer technology that is called a high volume sampler, that with dioxin it's really difficult to get good data. The detection limits are higher than the standards in a lot of cases. So you really need more water to get a better representation of the concentration that's there. So the advisory council wrote a letter to EPA requesting them take a look at that type of sampling technology. Things, I guess, newer items. There's an educational kiosk at Jacobs Island by the university that was focused on the Milltown Dam, which has been 10 years now gone. And that kiosk has not changed. So there's an opportunity to use that kiosk to do some education. So the advisory council came up with several ideas, and we're putting together a rotation on different subjects to put in that kiosk, including the dam removal. Now that it's been removed, what changes have we seen? And then upcoming projects like the rattlesnake dam removal, and then just general aquifer education. So there are a number of ideas, and the council's really excited about that. There are also, the district board will be updating the charge in the coming months. And so the council took the opportunity to look over the charge and see if there's some things that they might suggest to you as changes. One of those is how they set agenda items. So in the past, we've kind of worked with the chair, me or Peter worked with the chair to establish those items. The council would like to have the ability to suggest items for the agenda as well. So that's a small change that's coming up. We have a number of new council members, probably I'd say 8 to 10 new council members. So we had a big change this year. And so we did an overview of the district, the board, the health board, their interactions, and the advisory council's role with the health board and the water quality district board. So that was well received. I think there was some confusion about who does what and how things work. And then for upcoming agenda items, the council is interested in talking about, again, related to flooding, the human waste and the garbage that is accumulated in the floodplain around some of our homeless camps in town, and that's a tricky issue from a legal standpoint, jurisdictional standpoint. I guess there's a very humid side to it as well. So that'll be an interesting discussion. We'll also be looking at some updated plans from Smurfit with groundwater monitoring plans and revised ecological risk assessments and human health risk assessments. So a lot going on, and a berm stability study should be out very soon.
Smurfit stone farms.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
Everything else we call levies, so maybe those
Yeah.
are the firms that we have.
Yeah, we don't call
we're
those
concerned
levies.
about.
We want to make that distinction. These are
Yeah.
not certified. So.
One comment, and I know you've looked at these budgets and things like that, but we have that set-aside budget for the Milltown Historic Preservation Fund.
Yes.
And if that money could be used to develop one of the 4 concepts that you had for your kiosk, you might look at that to see if
Yeah.
there is a fit
That's a great
for the
idea.
charge for that money. I don't know, I'm just saying, we just keep moving
Trying
it,
to-
looking for
trying to
things
spend
that.
it. Every year we file that budget.
But you
Yeah.
mentioned Milltown, and so maybe there's, for that one
And I think the
piece.
folks that have been doing a lot of the history stuff in Milltown and maybe the community council up there would be interested in being in a conversation too. Because I mentioned it to them at the rainy opening day of Milltown City
Yeah,
Park.
it was so rainy.
Oh my gosh, it was
I
torrential.
didn't go.
Yeah. Great suggestion. Thank you.
Anything else for Travis? No? Thanks, Travis.
Thank you.
Public comments on items not on the agenda. Let's see, public. Board and staff comments on items not on the agenda. Okay.
Just one, and I'm glad Shannon's still here, and Ellen. The water quality district fees have not gone up for a very long time, so the Board of County Commissioners is the one that sets those fees, and it will be part of our preliminary budget discussion next Thursday. So maybe if you could talk about the dollars and the amount that we hope to generate.
I'd be happy to.
So by law, the commissioners can increase fees annually up to 10% without going through a process more than a resolution at a public hearing. And so we are recommending a 10% increase. That would represent a $39,000 increase for the district. It is needed to correct a structural imbalance in that district budget. For a long time, I mean, fees haven't been raised since 2000. So it's been a really long time. And I think Ellen has brought up to this board before that we have been spending cash. We had a lot of cash to begin with. We've been spending cash on like household hazardous waste collection. And now we're at the point where we really can't justify that anyway because it's an ongoing expense. So it needs to come from sustainable money. So it represents not a very big increase to the individual homeowner. It goes from, if somebody is on sewer, it goes from $9.90 to like $10.78, $10.58. I'm sorry, I don't have those numbers in front of me.
99 more cents.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a little more than $1 if you're not on sewer. And then the larger facilities are multiples of that base fee, but nobody's fee would go up more than 10%. So we're appreciative that the commissioners are interested in taking a look at it, and so we'll be going to public hearing on the next Thursday for that.
Thursday at 2.
Awesome.
And then I just wanted to add that the Milltown State Park did officially open on a pouring rainy day, but it still had an amazing turnout. And if you haven't been out there, it's really cool. We were hoping that it would take all the parking for people jumping in the river. It has not. We had to send sheriff deputies yesterday because people are not kind. So when you decide to open your cooler in the middle of the road, then you beat on cars that try to pass. So they were only keeping the gates open till 7, and apparently somebody cut the lock off the gate so to get their car back out. So now they're going to be open till 9. We understand. So that'll help. But the park is just it didn't have time for a lot of the vegetation to hadn't had sun to go with the rain yet when it opened. So it's going to be really nice. It's a nice, calm place. It's got accessible spaces to get around. And of course, once the bridges are done on the interstate, then it will connect back over to the community, so that'll be great.
Awesome.
Can I ask just one question? I'm sorry. So we can take that letter to the district, or Jean, you're going to be there. Do you want to do that as a Board of Health person?
Yeah, I can do that.
I have 2 copies. Can I take one of them?
Sure.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, good luck.
With that, we'll adjourn as the Water Quality District Board and reconvene as the Air Quality Pollution Control Board. We do have minutes from June 21st to approve. You're not going to take it out.
I would move to accept them as written.
Any comments on the motion? All those in favor, signal with aye. Aye. Motion carries. TPCC update, the meeting was on Tuesday this week. It was a relatively short meeting again. There's a small change and amendment to the Transportation Improvement Program. It's a little bit of money movement between years and things like that, just based on how things are actually progressing out on different projects that are ongoing. Just an administrative change there. We looked at Erin presented something this is an early look because the MPO is really working on updates and drafts to the 19 Unified Planning Work Program and the Transportation Improvement Program, and sort of what that means, and thinking a lot about the fact that in 2020, when we move into a census, that it could be that Helena and Bozeman become MPOs, which there's not clarity on what that means if the allocation, because there's new MPOs, stays the same and they get their allocation, or if the money in the state gets further, divided. And this MPO, and buildings could be receiving less money. There's some unobligated funds right now, and just working through. We always want some unobligated funds in case that situation comes up, but looking at what we might do with those unobligated funds in the near term to kind of use the money that's allocated so it doesn't look like, oh geez, they have too much, just cut it down. So this year updates to some plans, and in 2019, as much as everyone thought, oh, really, it just got approved as a long-range transportation plan. They'll be looking at, reopening in 2019 and making, there was a wholesale revision of that plan, and it'll be a smaller pickup, but not as robust as the last update, but just, getting things, correct and updated and current in the long-range transportation plan. And then 2019 through 2023, the transportation improvement plan will be updated as well. So it's kind of what's going on with their work plans and how the money might be spent. And then the community transportation safety plan contract will be going. It was at council level yesterday, or maybe public safety, and then goes up to council for approval on Monday. So that work will come under contract, and that's looking at all of the things that we need to be looking at in terms of accident frequency and locations and things like that to improve safety, as well as making the jump to new technology. So how are we going to start to think about I was going to say unoccupied vehicles. I'm not sure why a vehicle would be moving without any occupant, but
You never know.
Yeah.
yeah, you just send it, and the people at the grocery store put in your groceries,
Right,
and it drives
there
them
you
home
go.
to you.
Yeah.
Of course, I mean, I'm being too short-sighted, but
Driverless cars.
driverless cars, yes, and how our community needs to be prepared for those new technological advances that are coming our way.
Scary.
So that was it. And the only other thing was already in the paper today, because it was the ribbon cutting for the Golden Spike
Yep.
piece
Oh,
of
yeah.
the last piece of the trail to Hamilton,
Which is
so,
pretty cool.
which is excellent. And the very first, the exciting thing about it, bicycle pedestrian crossing signal, designed for you to be on a bike, hit it, ride, time it, and I haven't seen it, so I'm not sure if there's a loop.
I saw
You
it
did
this morning. I'm not on my bicycle, but I was on my car going over to community hospital, and I saw the signal become activated. It was
Really?
pretty cool.
So that's where we cross south.
Yeah.
So it's on the- on
Right,
the
it's
south
the
end.
crossing
Right by
at
the
on
mall.
South Avenue
Yeah.
where the
No, it's at
Oh.
South and.
The trail.
Where the
Johnson.
trail goes.
South,
Oh,
yeah.
Johnson, yeah.
diagonally across that intersection.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, so I haven't seen it either to see how it works in terms of timing and things, and I figured if it didn't activate, then maybe there's a turnaround loop, so you don't have to, but I don't know. So I'm excited, so, anyway, that was the big news. Geez, I almost didn't, it was at the bottom of my page. So last couple of things, public comments on items not on the agenda. And then board and staff comments on items not on the agenda.
I would just add one that could relate to air quality because of transportation issues, but Missoula County did just apply for what used to be called the Tiger Grant, now they're called the Build Grant, for the Mullen Road end of the airport kind of space. We've done, this is number 3, so hopefully good things turn. And it has a lot more support this time. It's got city, county both contributing towards it, and we'll see. We should know this fall.
Okay. With that, we will adjourn.
Thank you. You're good on time.